Hi guys, welcome back. Today is a new shirt day, might I add. It does have a brand on it, but that's okay. Don't mind my Christmas presents and the door open because there's Christmas presents there. But other than that, we're back to the usual. I'm also going to still be popping in to make sure that the kids are asleep. This is a little bit longer video, I guess, than the last few weeks, just because a little something different's happening. But same idea. We're just going over week 3. So this week is week 3, implantation. So at this point, if you have conceived and the egg and the sperm have met, we are now going to be having implantation happen this week. Some symptoms of this whole process is you are going to have a rise in hormones because that HCG is rising and rising and rising because you're growing a human. And during this, your HCG is going to reach a certain point to tell the ovary, don't release any more eggs. We're trying to make this a baby. So then the implantation will happen, and then all of those signals are sent to your brain. And during that time, you will feel sore breasts, your nose. You'll get very heightened senses, so you'll get that pregnancy nose. You can bleed. 15 to 25% of women do end up bleeding. Birthing people do end up bleeding, which is normal. It should be a light bleed, though. It shouldn't be anything thick. Bloating is a definitely more usual symptom. It may feel like some people think that this is like the baby, but it's really just the bloating from hormones, but that's okay. Everyone's excited. Your BBT is also going to stay high during this process, and that's simply because your basal base temperature, and that's simply because it helps with implantation and the hormones going on, and rising is going to tell your body to raise that for the implantation to help assist that, essentially. And it almost feels like you have PMS. You're going to be emotional, like I said, tender breasts. You could have light bleeding, spotting, bloating, but this is the good week to be taking a positive test and going out and getting those tests and getting that. This should be a week you would be able to see a positive test. Sometimes you may need to wait another week, but implantation, there's usually enough HCG in the body for you to pee on a over-the-counter pregnancy test for it to say yes, because there's enough of that. And that is what a urine test is looking for from that. And the difference between one that you can get from the doctor's office versus them is they're not as powerful as a doctor's office. So a doctor's office can tell, day 1 of that being heightened, and a over-the-counter, implantation really has to be set in stone for them to be doing that, because that is when the HCG is really skyrocketed at this point. So during this process, if you do have a positive pregnancy test, obviously that's time to call the doctor. They will not have you come in until week 7 or 8 usually. Just there is only so much to be done at that point, so you should wait it out. And on top of it, as sad as it is, it's a likelihood of you to miscarry is specifically in those first 7 to 8 weeks. So they really want to make sure that that fetus is formed, and then things can start to move with a doctor and an OB. Before that, like I said, is just kind of a waste of time. Now, that is if you are a regular birthing person. If you have miscarried in the past, or if you have had complications in the past, things of that nature, the minute that you have a pregnancy test, you should be seen. And most doctors, if they know that that is the case, they will tell you to come right in. But in case the secretary or the nurse, something happens, make sure you tell them that you need to have an appointment immediately if you've miscarried, had a stillbirth, any of these nature, because you really should be monitored the entire time, checking on your HCG. And essentially, you're just going to keep up on blood tests, and they'll probably have you do it weekly to ensure that your HCG is rising properly. So that being said, what's kind of going on, those are your symptoms. That's what you should be doing. That's kind of how you'll be feeling. But what little guy down there is doing on top of the implantation is there is now going to be the amniotic sac. Right after implantation happens, the amniotic sac is going to form out of the outer cells of the placenta and going to start to form liquid around the cushion of the baby and the placenta now that they're starting to form on their own. So everything has this nice protective bubble around it. And it kind of all grows in the same time period. Your fetus is forming, it using its cells to form your placenta, and then your amniotic sac is forming kind of on the outside of these things and giving it a nice fluid for both of them to continue to nourish. And on top of it, you are going to be connected basically by blood vessel at this point, and that kind of happens more formed next week during week 4, but that is how nutrients and oxygen is already getting to them, but it has a solid form starting the next week. It's really just the amniotic sac. All of these cells are breaking into the parts that they are going to grow into, essentially the fetus, the placenta, and the amniotic sac right after implantation, which is also a big reason why HCG is huge, because so much is happening right then on top of the implantation. So you really do need your HCG to be so high, your human growth hormone. So this week, it's really all about your blastocyst finally making the implantation. Huge week for implantation and huge week to take that test. That's essentially all week 3 is. So big stuff, but also little moves. But little moves make a big thing. Thank you, and comment below if you have any questions.